Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in Williams Arena, the venue in the Big Ten that leads the league by a wide margin in both the number of things you can hit your head on and the number of things you can fall off. This is your wrap video following Purdue's one-sided 61-39 win at Minnesota. It is brought to you by friends at Purdue Club Hotel. Thank you to them, as always, for their promotional support. Obviously, a game full of defensive superlatives for Purdue. 12 points at halftime allowed is matched the lowest ever in a half against Purdue. It was 9 with 52 seconds to go. Purdue flirted with the fewest points ever allowed to a Big Ten opponent before it kind of got away there in the last couple minutes. Not that it matters, not that that's what Purdue's playing for, but the record was 35. Minnesota ended up with 39. Stuff doesn't matter. What does matter is, in this sort of performance, I think Purdue kind of made a little bit of a statement here. I've always said, and if you've watched these videos, listened to my podcast, our podcast, or read my stuff, if people read text anymore, I have no idea. You've heard it 1,000 times here, that the team that wins the Big Ten isn't always the team that beats Michigan State on Sunday afternoon on CBS. It's the team that doesn't lose to Nebraska on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on BTN. It's just the nature of this league. It's the nature of human beings. It's the nature of young people that every now and then you're just going to let up. Every now and then you're going to have a game like tonight's where Purdue, which is number 3 in the country, 17-1, in a game like this looks on paper to be unbeatable, could probably show up here and just be okay and still win, and does the opposite. I shouldn't say the opposite of okay, because the opposite of okay would be bad, but I hope you're getting to you're picking up the circuitous point I'm trying to make here. Purdue was better than okay here tonight. They were really, really good, when I think people would have just kind of shrugged their shoulder had Purdue been something less than really, really good. Never for a second was the outcome of this game in doubt. If you ask me, it wasn't until the end of the first half where the margin of Purdue's margin really got to a place where this was a blowout, but Minnesota couldn't score. Minnesota couldn't score when Zac Eady was on the floor, at least. And Purdue, with the business-like way in which it really took care of business here, again, in one of these snooze bar type of situations, I think really, really spoke to this team's approach, this team's wiring, this team's ability to be consistent. And right now, when you look at how the rest of this season could unfold, you look at Purdue right now with a 2-game lead in the Big Ten standings. It's too early to be talking about the Big Ten race, probably, but I get paid by the word in these videos, so I'm going to talk about the Big Ten race. Purdue is now up 2 games on Rutgers. Purdue is now up 2 games on Michigan. Those were the 2 games that were 2 teams that I think were 1 game back. Purdue's sitting here with a chance to, build on its lead atop the conference if it can just be consistent. Who else in the Big Ten has shown that they're going to be consistent? Who else in the Big Ten has shown that they can be that consistent number 2 team kind of in this Big Ten race? No one. It looked like Rutgers there for a while. They've lost a couple games. In fairness, they had a game taken away from them in December at Ohio State that, would really matter long-term in this Big Ten race, which is profoundly unfair. And I can't remember. Is that Ohio State's only Big Ten win at this point? I don't know. But look, the last couple Big Ten games on the road, and Purdue's 5-0 on the road in the Big Ten. And that's huge. That's what, more than half your road schedule now, isn't it? And you're unbeaten, which is enormous because it's road wins that matter a little bit more in the Big Ten. But Purdue again just showed they weren't going to screw around here. They were going to come with their best, and if they did that on a Thursday night in Minneapolis, here in front of a relatively lifeless crowd, that speaks to Purdue's ability to be consistent. That speaks to Purdue's ability to go here and there or wherever the rest of the season and not phone it in and not drop that game you shouldn't drop that all of a sudden changes the complexion of the Big Ten race, gives somebody else a chance, things like that. So just a really encouraging sign from from a team development perspective, from just the perspective of the things we continue to, I guess, be shown by this team. It is way more mature than it technically should be based on its age and, aggregate experience level. And this was a great example of that. The maturity and the business-likeness, the business-like approach with which, Purdue won this game, I think speak really well. They reflect really well on this team, and they speak really well to Purdue's potential the rest of the season, albeit there being a lot of basketball games left to be played. I think that Zac Eady, I know Minnesota is struggling. I know they're in a bind from a personnel perspective. I know they have some injuries. I think Ben Johnson's doing a lot of good things here. I think his team is probably 2 seasons away with this group from being, credible in the Big Ten. I think they got a long way to go. I think they're feeling the pain of a rebuild more in year 2 than year 1. That being said, I think that this was a Big Ten Defensive Player of the Game. A Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year sort of game for Zac Eady. Whether he can win that award, whether he will win that award, I don't know. But I don't know if I've seen a lot of games where an individual defender has more of an impact on a game than Zac Eady did tonight. This again, I try to avoid overstatement, but this was like a Greg Oden level of influence over this game, because not only did Zac Eady, block a bunch of shots, challenged and changed a bunch of shots, but you could literally see Minnesota, bailing around the basket at times when Zac Eady would make his presence known. And that's the psychological part, too, of rim protection. Shot blocking and rim protection are 2 different things. And a lot of both of them is sort of the psychological effect that it can have on opponents. And I think you see with great shot blockers, great rim protectors, people tend to worry about them even when they're not even around. You worry that they're around. When they are around, you really worry. And I think you saw Zac Eady really affect Minnesota and what they were able to do offensively. And I think that was a huge part of, Minnesota shooting 32% for the game, only having 12 points at halftime, and only having 39 for the end of the game. I'd be interested to know, and maybe I'll look this up, maybe I won't. I wouldn't want this to come out as a call-out of anybody, but I'd be interested to know what percentage of Minnesota's scoring came with Eady on the bench, because it felt like it was 60-40-ish, 70-30, and when you look at the minutes distribution, that wouldn't really align. What I'll do is maybe I'll look that up on the flight home tomorrow, just out of curiosity more than anything, not really to call out Trey Kaufman-Renn or anything like that, but just to reflect Zac Eady's influence on this game defensively, because it was considerable. The other side of the coin, Braden Smith's effect on this game offensively was very much the same level. As good as he's been for Purdue, as influential as he's been, as much of a playmaker as he's been, and as much as he's given Purdue, a real heartbeat and just basic ball screen offense, and the different level I think he's helped take Zac Eady to as an offensive player in that regard. When he's scoring, Purdue's a different animal. Purdue is just a different animal. And I think when he's scoring at the rim and ball screen stuff, I think that's more likely to open up Zac Eady for a lot of those dunks and high percentage shots. Not that they're all not high percentage shots for him. When he's making threes, when he's stepping into threes off that early high ball screen or in transition, whatever it might be, he's putting enormous pressure on defenses. And that's going to open up other stuff for Purdue. It's easy to look at box scores after games and say this guy scored, this guy didn't score, this guy's more valuable than this guy's more valuable than that guy. Purdue needs this guy scoring, Purdue doesn't need that guy scoring, whatever it might be. But I do think it's different. I do think role matters. Like, when it's Ethan Morton and Mason Gillis and guys who are, those third, fourth, fifth scoring options that don't get a lot of stuff run for them. Mason Gillis is getting more stuff for him run than ever before. But still, your offense is being carried by your 2 freshman guards and by Zac Eady, obviously, and by your offensive rebounding, stuff like that. it doesn't always matter as much when Ethan Morton's not scoring. It didn't matter when Nojel Eastern wasn't scoring, contrary to the court of public opinion, all that much. It's nice when they do, because more points are always better than not as many points. That's irrefutable basketball logic. If you have an option, your choice between 20 points and 5 points, take 20 points every single time. But it's not all created equally. And I think the influence of a player like Braden Smith scoring is much, much, much different than the influence of Ethan Morton or Mason Gillis scoring. I think, again, as I mentioned before, when Braden Smith is stepping into those long threes in transition out of a high ball screen, whatever, defenses are going to have to extend even further. That's going to open up some slips for Zac Eady. That's going to sag people into rebounding position. It's going to open stuff up for other people. The ball screen stuff has completely revolutionized or transformed Purdue's offense, I think. Anyway, it's given Purdue a lot more margin for error when their initial offense has kind of gotten knocked out or whatever it's been. It's put Braden Smith in position to just flat out make plays, and Purdue has a guard who can do that right now. And that's not always something they've had at that position. But I think when he's scoring, Purdue's an entirely different animal. And I think this was a great example of that. You know, Purdue only scores 61 points. Doesn't matter one bit, because for at least half of this game, Purdue didn't need to be scoring. I also think Purdue sort of shortened the game a little bit by getting kind of methodical at times, really working the end of the shot clock, stuff like that. So that point total doesn't matter. But you look at Braden Smith's influence on this game, it goes way beyond his 19 points and 7 assists and 7 rebounds. He's pretty good, everybody. And, I think it's halfway through the season, but I think you're sitting here and you're looking at a great year for freshmen in the Big Ten, with Jett Howard, with Jalen Hood-Schifino, with Bryce Sensabaugh, and, kind of some other guys around the league. But you look at that all-freshman team in the Big Ten, and Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith need to be locks. And it's tough. It's going to be, if it comes down to it, where, somebody has to choose between the two, I don't even know how you do it. They're really good freshmen in the Big Ten. Both of those guys are having Big Ten Freshman of the Year types of seasons. And that's as big a reason as any, if not the reason, that Purdue's in the position it's in right now. Zac Eady obviously looms largest, because as I've said since Portland, Zac Eady is the reason Purdue's in the position Purdue's in, but none of it's possible without the play of Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith, and just how advanced they've been, how good they've been, how mature they've been, how competitive they've been, how fearless they've been, how unfazed they've been, on down the line. So I'm kind of running out of stuff to talk about here. I feel like these things are always just, hey guys, here's how good Zac Eady is, and here's how good Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith are. We need some other stuff to happen. We need losses. I know you don't view it that way, and I shouldn't have even said that, because I know how you're reacting, but it's the same stuff after every game. Oh well. So, all right, that was our wrap video. That went in a weird direction there at the end. 61-39, Purdue over Minnesota. Excuse me. This has been Brian Neubert from goldenblack.com, live in the barn, as you may know it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. I will talk to you again on Sunday after Purdue plays Maryland. So thanks, everybody, and thank you to the Purdue Union Club Hotel, as always, for your promotional support. We appreciate it, and have a good night, everybody.